back to the Pete McMurray Show.
When our next guest is not touring with Sammy Hagar, Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin Evening is on tour right now. You would think that this guy would want to take a break. For tickets, go to jasonbonham.net. Let's welcome back to the show. It's Jason Bonham. How are you, brother?
I am exceedingly good for a man that all I wanted to do when I was younger was if I could play music and not have to work, then I'd be happy. and then I found Sammy Hagar, and then all of a sudden, now I seem to work as well as play music. No, the working part, as I said, if this is the worst I have to do, no, as I said, the hardest part of our show is just being away from home. I mean, my kids are grown up now. Rock and roll's changed so much. I just miss my dog and my cats. You know,
we all love our pets. That's so true.
For me, as much as I love the Sammy stuff too. So
right,
I was always, when I said to Sammy, "You okay with this?" He goes, "Hell yeah, let's do it." I was like, "Oh my God,
Sammy!"
So it's a dream come true. That's it. I'm fortunate. I get to play all these great songs as well as my dad's songs.
I love it. Sammy is a huge friend of the show. We're going to have him on for the tour, and I just love that you guys are together, but most people would take some time off, but you, of course, go back on the road. But first of all, I need to ask you about the recent passing of Foo Fighters drummer Taylor Hawkins. I would think that this would affect you on so many levels. He was a great drummer in one of the biggest bands on the planet, the Foo Fighters. And your father, one of the greatest drummers in rock in one of the biggest bands at the time on the planet, he passed away too young also. What was going through your mind when you heard the news?
Without going back to the exact moment, it was, I've known him for a long time. I've known David and Taylor. They were like the brother and the older brother, kind of the blonde and the brunette. They were.
Yeah.
If Dave is a super nice guy, so was Taylor. They used to be together. They came to see me many, many, many years ago when I first ever did the Led Zeppelin thing, like 97.
Oh, wow.
I've got to say. But Dave shared a story with 22,000 people. I went to see him play. And so he just basically says on the start of the song, he's doing times like these, he said, there's a guy at the side of the stage who, when I was 18, I was so desperate to meet him that I waited 4 hours after he finished playing to shake his hand. Because not only was he an awesome drummer, but his father was a god to me. And he goes, and I got to meet him. And it took him 30 years to come and see a Foo Fighters show. So to play this song with him on the side of the stage, so he goes, I think we need to sing this song to him. And that, to me, was a huge emotional moment.
Oh, my gosh.
And Taylor's looking at me and going, oh, he got you. He got you. and I'm so, they did what they did. And then after the show, I said to Taylor, Taylor, because I asked Dave, I said, Dave, was I when you met me, like all them years ago? Because I imagine myself, I was, I think of me as that 19-year-old upstart thinking I own the world. And Dave's like, no, you were great. And Taylor behind him going, no, you were.
Oh, that's great. I love that he wasn't afraid to tell the truth.
No, he was like, no, you were, I'll tell you the truth. Dave won't say anything, but he was super, super nice. And, it was hard. I found out 10 minutes before we went on stage in Vegas.
Oh.
And I would say that was one of the hardest. I was with my son, and I suddenly burst into tears, and my son goes, Dad, what's wrong? And his phone blew up, and everybody else's phones all started to blow up, and it was, we didn't see it coming. Nobody saw that coming.
Right.
I honestly imagine that the Foo Fighters would be like the Stones, and they would just tour and tour forever. And tour for decades to come. So it is such a jolt to be like, oh my gosh, it's over.
Machine Gun Kelly, he said something on a show recently about when they just met them because they were in South America. And he was so true the way both Dave and Taylor used to work a room. They gave everybody their moment.
100%.
Right?
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So when he said that, I went, you know what? That's exactly what it was like when I went to see him. I took my brother-in-law, and I knew Taylor would love the fact my brother-in-law used to work for Roger Taylor from Queen because he was a huge Queen fan. He gave him his moment, so they were sat talking about Roger's drum kit, why he cymbals.
Wow.
So it was. They both are hugely, The other guys are super nice too and kind of quiet, but Dave and Taylor they're the dynamic duo. I always kind of look at them as they worked off each other, and I just, my heart and my love, best wishes go out to his family.
Well said. Yes.
Hearing you tell these stories and just mentioning all of the amazing people that and that the people know. Like, do you have any relationships that aren't one Kevin Bacon away from a rock god? Do you have any just like normal people in your life?
I did something the other day, and actually the best of it is the next day the guy was working with Kevin Bacon, and I went, oh my God. Oh my
Nailed
God!
it. You really do know everyone.
And Kevin Bacon. Yes.
Yes. Well, I said, here's my number. If he calls me, I then want to be able to say, I'm 0 degrees away from Kevin Bacon because now I'm
Maybe I'll just offer up my services. I'm pretty much an idiot. So if you want my cell phone number and just want to call me anytime you want to talk to somebody sort of normal.
You know what? Send it me because stranger things have happened. I'm always good at sending stuff. If you, at the right time at the wrong time with the right moment.
You will take it at any time.
We're talking with Jason Bonham. Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin Evening on tour right now. Go to jasonbonham.net. You've been on the show many, many times, and correct me if I'm wrong, for people that are listening right now. When you were growing up, the drums were in the living room, and people would come over, like Jimmy Page or Paul Rogers from Bad Company, and you were around 5 or 6 years old, and they would have you play the drums, correct?
Correct. It was the usual thing was the drum kit was sat there like it, as you see in the song Remains the Same. Drum kit was there next to the jukebox. I didn't know who these people were. It was just Dad said,
just some friends.
He was proud. He'd come and wake me up, and go, oh, come and play for my friends. That just felt very normal, like if you go to school the next day, well, doesn't everybody do that? Doesn't everybody get woken up during the night? Don't we all go on vacations with one of the Beatles? Come on.
I mean, totally normal. Just a normal Tuesday.
Yeah, we used to just have members of super groups turn up and stay with us for a few days when we were on vacation, which wasn't very often, but when we did, it was always like a revolving door. After 10 days, somebody else would show up and then replace that person, and somebody else would show up to replace that person. Dad loved, he was a fun, loving guy and had a good time, and in certain ways, I'm glad he achieved so much in such a short life.
Right. And I love the fact that you share these stories with us and everybody listening right now. The last time Page and Plant and John Paul Jones played together was 2007 at O2 Arena, and you were on drums, and there was 1 billion people, over 1 billion people on that waiting list, including myself. But
you should have called me.
Well, now I know. See, I met you after the fact. But will we ever see Page and Plant on stage again? And would you ever play drums?
Would I ever play drums again?
Of course you would.
Hold on. Yeah, there's your question. I don't know if it ever would happen. If they asked me and if they ever did play together, of course, anybody in their right mind, the line would go around the building. I'd hope my name would still be on the top of the list, of course. Yeah, I mean, it was one of the greatest times of my life. It kind of reintroduced me again to a lot of people that didn't know me or the people that are kind of forgotten. My life from 39 became the busiest, and I got more calls after that show than I've ever had in my life. So
wow.
It really was. Even though it didn't continue, it helped me immensely. Even if it was just people to be reminded that, hey, yeah, Jason can play drums too. So but I was very proud of that moment. They all, really up their game, and it wasn't like, oh, they're gone. It's a good job they stopped. They were on.
Right.
Every one of them, Robert, Jimmy, Jonesy. It was a great.
Well, Robert still plays Zeppelin songs in concert with Alison Krauss. I mean, if he picked up the phone and just called up Jimmy Page and said, hey, let's do it, I'm sure Jimmy already has a bag packed sitting right by the front door.
I tell you what, though, one of the nicest things that happened to me through the last strange couple of years we've all had, right? When I was recording with Sammy in Nashville, I'd spoken to Robert briefly beforehand over some business matters with the state and Zeppelin and things. And he goes, oh, well, I'm off to Nashville now. And I said, I'm going to be in Nashville. So we ended up, for 7 days, we ended up together every night, my wife and I, and Robert has known I've been with my wife since I'm 15, so we all hung out in the same area, so we would sit with him in this lobby of this empty hotel now because of still restrictions and COVID. And we reminisced and went back, and it was probably one of the best experiences I've ever had with Robert, because there was no entourage, no one around us.
Yeah,
we could just talk about the old days and blah, and he was telling me stories of my dad and funny in the beginning and when they did this, and it was a really special time. And then the laugh about it all is he would say, like, okay, you're going to meet me downstairs 10 minutes. And I'd say, can you give me 20 minutes? And he'd go, okay, I'll give you 20 minutes. And then because we weren't staying in the same hotel, he thought we were.
He didn't even know.
My wife and then we would go, right, let's go. And we would power walk from our hotel, it was like half a mile or a mile away, from the other side of Nashville to the other side of Nashville. And he'd go, why did it take you so long to come downstairs? And we're like,
how did he not figure it out?
Yeah, and he'd go, I said, Robert, I didn't want to tell you we're not in the same hotel. He goes, oh, why didn't you? I would have got you a room. I was like, it's okay. Sammy Hagar's paying for my room. You didn't have to pay.
I love these stories. I love that you shared these stories. Jason Bonham is with us. He is on tour. Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin Evening. For tickets, go to jasonbonham.net. Quick timeout. More with Jason Bonham on the way.
More of the Pete McMurray Show next. Now, back to the Pete McMurray Show.
Man, how great does that sound? We're talking with Jason Bonham. Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin Evening. He is on tour right now. For tickets, go to jasonbonham.net. Jason, we talked about your dad, John Bonham. We talked about Foo Fighters drummer Taylor Hawkins. What drummers today do you like to watch?
All I know him as on social media is Tosh the drummer. And he plays with a bunch of different people. Tosh the drummer, if you look him up on social media, he plays with, I think, a guy called Jaden XC, and he's played with Machine Gun Kelly. When Rooks got injured, his drummer got injured. And I tell you what, it's just an amazing young player that I was like, yes, this is somebody that really excites me the way he plays. So many great drummers now, and the speed ability of there's a whole other way
it's crazy. Speaking of all different kinds of music styles, for so long, Nashville was really heralded as the country spot. But it seems like the more and more musicians we talk to of all genres are meeting and working and recording in Nashville. Do you feel like the live music scene is no longer or the recording scene is no longer just country, that really this other genres are kind of taking over?
I would definitely say from the amount of people I know that from all walks of life, from different bands, different music, all went to Nashville and all still, and as I said, I love it. It's not just country. When you're recording there, some of these producers, if you're a good producer, you're a good producer. I always look at it like that. It's like if you're a good guitar player, you're not just a good guitar player for that one style. there's great players for that style, but there's great guitarists that can play anything. So I think Nashville is just becoming a wonderful heritage, and I think we always like to hold on to those kind of things because a lot of the big rock studios have gone now, especially in New York City.
Right. Yeah.
For me, that I just loved that it's got a vibe to it. Whether you like it or not, Nashville has a cool vibe. I mean, I got to hug the RCA dog, which is a famous picture of Elvis. There's a famous picture of Elvis singing to it.
Yep.
And I was like, is that the one? And they went, yeah, that's the one. I said, can I get it down? So I carry this down as if it's, my life. I'm like, I can't afford to break it if it falls. and I had a moment with this thing. And so when you give me your number, I'll send you the picture of me with the dog he sang to.
I love it. I love it. The iconic RCA dog.
Yes.
And Jason, when you're doing an evening of Led Zeppelin, what is your favorite Zeppelin song to play every night? I'm sure people ask you this, but there's got to be one. It's like, oh my gosh, this is my favorite. And here's why.
Well, there's so many, but I still, Kashmir, I would say, is one of my favorites because it's trying to keep it simple, but still make it's got to have a groove, but also to be explosive at the end. The specific version I always go back to is the 79 Nedworth version. And if you haven't seen that, go check it out online. My dad, at the end of Kashmir, what he does is just phenomenal. So, and that was always my blueprint when I played the O2. And people said to me, "Oh, it was great because you did your own thing in Kashmir." And I went, "Listen to 79 Nedworth. You'll see what I got it from."
I love this because I'm a classical singer, and the way you just described your process on this sounds so reminiscent of everything I learned in music school. How you go back, you study the past conductors, you study the past orchestras. How did they play it? How was it originally done? How was it modified? And then you bring it together to make it your own. It's really cool.
Yeah, that is that people said to me when I explain the way I play. They say, "What kind of?" They say, "You don't just play like your dad." And I went, "Well, I'm not going to, am I? Because my dad is, the way he played was a mixture of his influences from Buddy to Joe Morello to Gene Krupa. That you can hear the mixture of those guys,
right?
And that makes it him. When he mixes all of those people up together, it created John Bonham. For me, obviously with my dad, and then there was Stuart Copeland that was a big influence on me when I was a kid. Phil Collins was a huge influence on me. Mel Gaynor from Simple Minds, the Once Upon a Time album was great. Chad Smith, Richie
I love
Hayward
Chad
from
Smith.
Little Feat,
Yes.
Little Feat,
Right.
Richie Hayward from Little Feat,
Yes.
which I didn't know about until I listened to him play with Robert. So until Richie Hayward played with Robert Plant, I didn't know about him. Alan White from Yes. So I'm very fortunate to have been able to take all those influences, and in my head I do things sometimes and go, oh, that's I'll name the person's last name in my head. Oh, I'm going to try a Phil here, and I can hear it when I listen back. I hear every bit of every player I've ever liked.
Of course you do.
In one song,
I love that you share these stories with us. I love that you come on the show every so often, and I can't wait to see you with Sammy and Michael. You guys have so much fun on stage. When does the tour start?
The tour never stops. Yeah, I mean,
it's so true.
Put it this way: if it hasn't been announced by now, in the next few days, and you'll hear about that in the very, very near future because it's only a couple of weeks away.
Can't wait. Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin Evening on tour right now. For tickets, go to jasonbonham.net. Jason, always a pleasure. You're the best. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
We'll talk soon.
Take care.
More of The Pete McMurray Show next.